Welcome to the It's Been Said podcast. I'm your host, SAI Executive Director Lisa Ramey. Today's episode is a special edition of the It's Been Said podcast. Matt Carver, Legal Services Director, will discuss his perspective on current legal topics relevant to district and school administrators. He'll offer his insights on this subject matter periodically over the coming months. Let's hear from Matt.
This is Matt Carver, and this is SAI's Legal Vortex. I thought I'd take an opportunity to share some things with you that are really more practical things this month. It's really not so focused on legal, or really not at all on legal. It's focused on things that I've had the privilege to observe over. I'm coming up now on 20 years at SAI, and this Christmas will be my 20th Christmas at SAI, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity that I've had to speak with so many of you over the years, so many of your colleagues over the years. Many of those colleagues have retired, some have passed away, but it's really been a blessing. But one of the things that I know is that when I've gotten calls, usually when I get calls, something's wrong. Uh, Often something isn't going right. Something's happened that's not necessarily a good thing. And with that, it's particularly frustrating for me, just to be frank with you. It's frustrating when I hear some that are so critical, and they're critical about public educators. And I know some of you listening are non-public educators, and I certainly appreciate you as well. But I think we could all agree that public educators have come under a lot of criticism, duress, especially it seems in recent years. And it's hard when I hear that, because even through those difficult times, I get to know the best of what you all do, and the best of what your staff members do, and that other educators do. So I just wanted to share some things this month that I appreciate about you, other educators, and staff members in your buildings. And I just encourage you to reflect on this a little bit. Reflect on, and some of the things I'm going to share aren't going to be easy things to hear. And sometimes some of those things might um, they might cause you to remember some things that you at times don't want to remember. But I think it's important, and because it goes to the purpose that you serve and what you do for students throughout the state of Iowa. So here are some things that I want to share with all of you about what I appreciate about educators here in our state, and frankly throughout the country, but I interact, of course, with Iowa educators. I appreciate the elementary educators who provide clean clothes and work in a caring way with students who aren't potty trained. Sometimes I know that you have students that come in, they're in kindergarten, they're not potty, some are in first grade. All times we'll get calls about much older students, typically in our elementary schools, who aren't potty trained for one reason or another. And you and your staff are having to work through that, help some of your staff help get them cleaned up. I know many of you have clean clothes, that you have extra sets of clothes to get them changed into. And I'll get those calls trying to figure out, well, how do you process this? What do we do here? How can we help this student and their family so this isn't an issue, an ongoing issue for this student? Because, of course, I'm sure that causes challenges for them as they're interacting with other students you're building. So that's one of the things I appreciate. I appreciate middle school educators. I'm just using this example. I know it unfortunately happens at other levels, but I appreciate middle school educators who are there for family, other students, and the community when a student commits suicide. And that's probably one of the most difficult things that some of you work through during your career, or those situations where you have a young person who's taken their own life. And unfortunately, I had some soldiers when I was in the military who took their own life. And I thank you for being there for those families, for the other students. But the biggest thing that I want to share with you is it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. And I'm sure some of you reflect back and you think, well, could I have done this? Should I have seen this sign? Is there something I could have done so this wouldn't have happened? And at the end of the day, just please, please, please remember it wasn't your fault. And thank you for all the things you did to be there for others during that just incredibly tragic time. I appreciate high school educators who mourn and grieve with students, other staff in the community when students are lost to traffic accidents. And that happens sadly every year where we're in a state, we obviously get cold weather, we get ice, and it seems to happen more often over the winter when we have those poor road conditions. But I know some of you have unfortunately had to work through those situations in your buildings where students, sometimes multiple students, have been lost to traffic accidents. And I appreciate the love and care and concern that you've shown to, again, to the families, other students in your communities during those difficult times. I appreciate all educators who may be the only individuals in a young person's life who provide words of encouragement and love to those students. And I hear many, many stories, many difficult stories, and I know that there are so many students in your buildings who come from very tough family lives, very difficult. And I just want to thank you for what you do to bring some encouragement and love into their lives. Because sadly, I know some of those students aren't getting that at home. Sadly, they might be getting the opposite at home. So I thank you for that. I appreciate educators who provide a listening ear and seek to protect and also at times find justice for students who've been physically or sexually abused. And these are some of the most difficult calls that I've received over the years, some of the darkest calls that I've received when I hear the extent of the abuse that some of your students have been on the receiving end, often when they're away from school, and sometimes at the hands of family members. And so I thank you for being there for these students who are trying to work through life through this incredible darkness. And so thank you for bringing some light to their life. So I appreciate you for that. I appreciate educators who are there for students when they tragically lose a family member to an accident. Sometimes your students lose perhaps parents to cancer or some other illness or to violence. And so thank you for being there for those students. And thank your staffs for being there for those students as they mourn and they grieve that incredible loss of a family member. I appreciate elementary educators who will get down on the carpet or on the floor or maybe one of those small chairs that you have in your buildings and you take time to read to students or you take time to listen to those students as they read or just provide a listening ear just to listen to what those students have to share that's important to them in their life, to those particularly young students. So I thank all of you for that. I I appreciate and thank and this really could be all educators. A lot of times, I think it's probably middle school and in high school, they'll get involved in assemblies, and you'll be silly and you'll be fun. And for some of you, it might be a little bit out of character. Others, I've learned it probably is in your character, frankly. But I appreciate you for doing that and just letting your guard down a bit, to have fun, to dress up, to do things, to have fun, whether it's during homecoming or assemblies or some other school activity, just to bring some joy to your students, to put a smile on their face, to make them laugh or cheer. So I appreciate that, and I thank you. I appreciate educators who give so many of their evenings to school activities. Your teachers, certainly, and I know all of you were teachers at one time, give their time to grading and doing other things, preparing for lessons that are coming up. Many of you have those activities extend into the weekend, where you have maybe a wrestling meet or some other activity on Saturday, or perhaps there's a choir concert or a band concert on a Sunday evening. Whatever the case might be, I know how much time that you all give to be there and to show your support for your students and their activities as they try to excel at whatever they do. So I appreciate and I thank you for that. I appreciate educators who stop and take time at the local grocery store or a restaurant or somewhere else in town to catch up with former students. And I know this happens. I've seen this firsthand sometimes when I've been with my younger brother, who is a high school principal. And I always make sure to, and I know he knows this, but to remind him, wow, how powerful that is when I'm with him, or I know that you are talking to those former students. And sometimes those students might say, hey, I know what, hey, Mr. Carver, I know you did these, whether it's some discipline or something else, or maybe it was a coach or again, a choir director or a teacher that was really expected a lot, had high standards, and really pushed those students. But then those students have grown and they've learned to appreciate that and they're able to see what you've done. So thank you for taking the time to have those conversations in your communities with former students. I appreciate educators who continually go to professional learning. And I, of course, see this all the time because our association puts on professional learning events so frequently. So I see the sincerity of those educators as they go to those events. You're not there just to, yeah, it might be nice to get out of the building now and then to catch up with colleagues. Yeah, sure. But I see the sincerity of educators when they attend professional learning, that they really want to learn. And the reason they want to learn is they want to take whatever they're learning back. You all want to take that back. Your teachers want to take that back. Why? Because you want to improve the education of your students. And so thank you for taking that so seriously. And thank you for doing that for the children here in our state. I appreciate educators and staff who do their best to bring dignity to students who come to school with smelly clothes at times. Maybe they have really bad body odor. Maybe it is that their clothes aren't getting their clothes aren't getting washed at home and they smell, and this is causing issues for them with their fellow students. Or they may be infested. I can't tell you how many calls over the years I've had where students have been infested with lice or bed bugs. And just imagining how difficult it'd be for those students to show up every day as they're scratching at their head and others are noticing these things. They're visible at times. I've seen photos at times. And so thank you for what you do and what your staff does to try to help those students, get them into clean clothes, work with HHS to try to ensure that their family has the supports that they need. And so I thank you. I thank you for that as well. And so I know I haven't meant to be downer. I know these are all some pretty heavy things I've shared, but the bottom line is that I appreciate educators for living out a purposeful career of service to students, families, and your communities, because that's what you do. And so when you hear that criticism, when you hear others, whether it's, and sometimes you see it on social media, you hear it on the news, you hear politicians or others, and what I want to say to you is don't let them steal your joy. Don't let them steal your joy. Reflect on whether you're near the beginning of your career in education and you're a young administrator, or whether you're close to retirement. Remember why you got into it and what you're doing to live a purposeful life to help students in Iowa, because you are doing that. I hear it. I know it. And so with that, I just hope that you all have a great Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, or if you celebrate some other religious holiday, or if it's just a time off for you. And just sit back and please, please, please reflect on all the good that you do in our state, and know that there are many like me who appreciate you. So thanks so much, and have a great break. Bye now.